All right, so you want to learn English faster?
Faster.
And, well, luckily you shared this video script with me from Interfusion on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
That's called
I know that channel.
Tips from
Oh,
Experts to Learn English Faster. And wow,
Yeah.
it is packed with advice.
It's a good one.
But instead of just listing every single tip,
Right.
what we're going to do in this deep dive is pull out the most impactful strategies,
Okay.
really connect them to the bigger picture
I like that.
of how we learn languages. And one of the things that really struck me right off the bat
Yeah.
was this emphasis on mastering everyday phrases
Okay.
and vocabulary.
Yeah.
That sounds so simple,
Right.
but I can see how building that solid foundation could make a huge difference
So sure.
when you're first starting out.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, every language, think about it this way,
Yeah.
is built upon a core set of words and phrases
Mhm.
that people use every single day in their life.
Right?
Imagine you walk into a cafe in an English-speaking country,
Yeah.
knowing how to order a coffee
Right.
or ask for directions
Yeah.
is going to be way more useful than knowing how to discuss quantum physics, at least initially.
At least at first.
Yeah.
So it's about prioritizing the
Exactly.
most practical
Right.
language skills first.
Exactly.
I've heard from some learners that they get overwhelmed
Oh, yeah.
trying to learn everything at once.
It's too much.
Would you say focusing on these everyday phrases is a good way to kind of avoid that overwhelm?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about breaking down the learning process into these small, manageable chunks.
Right.
And so by mastering those essential building blocks, you actually gain confidence and momentum, which motivates you to keep going.
So it's like a positive feedback loop.
Exactly. It's a positive feedback loop.
Yeah, you get a little bit of a win,
Yeah.
and that keeps you going.
It snowballs from there.
It's like building a solid foundation
Yes.
before you build a skyscraper. You wouldn't start with the penthouse suite.
Exactly. You start with the foundation.
Right. And speaking of building momentum,
Oh, okay.
the video also highlights the importance of speaking practice
Yes.
right from the get-go,
Love it.
even before you feel completely fluent. And it recommends using language exchange apps
Oh, yeah.
like Tandem and HelloTalk.
Those are good ones.
Yeah, have you ever used those?
I've used both of them.
What'd you think?
Yeah, I think they're a fantastic way to find conversation partners.
Okay, so true.
Yeah.
But I've always wondered this.
Okay.
Doesn't grammar play a crucial role in speaking correctly?
Of course.
How can we focus on speaking practice
Yeah,
if we haven't mastered all the grammar rules?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's a common misconception that we need to learn all these rules before we start speaking.
Right.
In reality, learning grammar can happen naturally through exposure and practice.
So you're talking about immersion.
Exactly. Like, think about how children learn their first language.
They don't pick up a textbook.
They don't start by memorizing grammar textbooks.
No.
They learn by listening,
Yeah.
by imitating, and by experimenting.
So you're saying that we can absorb grammar organically
Yes.
through speaking practice
For sure.
and immersion.
It's about understanding the logic behind the grammar
Okay.
through real-life examples
Right.
and context rather than just memorizing rules.
Got it.
In isolation,
Okay.
it actually aligns with how our brains naturally acquire language.
Interesting. So that's a fascinating insight.
Yeah.
It makes learning grammar seem a lot less intimidating.
Right.
Okay, so we've got the basics covered. We're practicing speaking.
Yep.
But what about understanding native speakers?
Okay.
I think one of the biggest hurdles for language learners
Yeah,
is being able to keep up with conversations,
for sure.
especially when they're speaking quickly.
Yeah, when they're going fast.
Yeah, what do we do?
That's where the power of immersion comes in. The video emphasizes surrounding yourself with English as much as possible.
Oh.
Movies, music, podcasts. Even if you don't understand everything at first.
Yeah.
It's like training your ears
Well,
to recognize the sounds and the rhythms of the language.
so even passively listening to English can help train our ears over time.
Precisely, imagine you're at a party with a lot of background noise.
Right.
It might be difficult to focus on a single conversation at first,
Right.
but as you continue to listen, your brain starts to filter out the distractions
Okay.
and tune into those specific voices that you want to hear.
Interesting.
Same principle applies to language learning.
So our brains are constantly analyzing and adapting to the language input that we receive,
Yes.
even if we're not consciously studying.
Even passively.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's a remarkable process.
It is.
And the more we expose ourselves to the language, the more efficient our brains become.
At processing it.
Processing it, exactly.
Wow. Okay, so we're building a strong foundation.
Yes.
We're practicing speaking.
Keep going.
We're immersing ourselves in the language.
Love it.
What about expanding our vocabulary?
Okay.
I mean, there are so many words in English.
I know, right?
Where do we even begin?
Well, the video offers some really practical tips here.
Okay.
One is to use a notebook
Okay.
or flashcards. They even mentioned an app called Anki
Oh, yeah.
to keep track of new words.
Right?
But even more importantly, they stress learning words in context rather than just memorizing isolated lists.
Like trying to remember a random phone number?
Yes.
Versus a phone number associated with somebody you know.
Exactly.
The context makes it so much easier to recall.
It creates a hook.
Yeah.
A memory hook.
It gives it meaning.
Exactly. By connecting a new word to a familiar situation, a phrase or an image, you create a stronger memory link in your brain.
That makes sense.
So, for example, imagine you're learning the word apple.
Okay.
Instead of just memorizing the word itself, create a mental picture of yourself biting into a juicy red apple.
Ooh, I like that.
You can almost taste it, right?
Yeah.
That image will help you remember the word more effectively.
I love that. So it's not just about rote memorization.
No.
It's about creating meaningful connections between words and our experiences.
That's how we learn language.
That's how we learn.
That's how our brains are wired.
But what about pronunciation?
Okay.
Sometimes I feel self-conscious about my accent. Any advice from the video on that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They highlight the power of mimicking native speakers.
Okay.
So it suggests watching videos or listening to podcasts and actively imitating the pronunciation, almost like shadowing their speech patterns.
So it's about more than just understanding the meaning of words.
Yes.
It's also about mastering the sounds.
Yeah.
And intonation patterns.
It's the music of the language.
The music of the language. I like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because sometimes we forget about the importance of writing in language learning.
Yes.
But the video brings up a really good point.
What's that?
About practicing writing every day.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's just journaling or writing short social media posts.
Right.
You know, that's something I struggle with.
Oh, really?
I tend to focus more on speaking and listening.
Okay.
Writing has always felt a bit daunting to me.
I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah.
But the video emphasizes that making mistakes is a natural part of the writing process.
Okay.
And it's through those mistakes that we learn and improve.
It's so true. It's about embracing those imperfections and seeing them as stepping stones.
Stepping stones. I love that.
Now, I'm curious.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on language learning apps? They seem to be all the rage these days.
They are?
I mean, are they good? Are they bad? What do you think?
Well, the video actually recommends several apps.
Okay.
Like Duolingo, Memrise,
Yeah.
BBC Learning English. They can be a great way to supplement your learning and practice vocabulary, grammar, and even pronunciation.
I've tried a few of those apps myself.
Yeah.
And I really like how they make learning feel more interactive and fun.
Yes.
It's definitely a more engaging approach than traditional textbooks.
Exactly. They tap into the principles of gamification, which can be incredibly effective for boosting motivation and engagement.
Right.
So by incorporating game-like elements, like points, levels, challenges, these apps make the learning process feel less like work and more like play.
More like a game.
Yeah.
All right. So we've talked about building a strong foundation.
Yes.
Embracing speaking practice.
Right.
Immersing ourselves in the language, expanding our vocabulary, and even leveraging technology.
It's a powerful tool.
What are some other key takeaways from the video
that
could help accelerate our English learning journey?
Well, one of the most important points the video makes is to not fear making mistakes.
Oh, that's a good one.
It emphasizes that native English speakers understand that you're learning and are often more than willing to help.
Yeah.
That can be a huge mental hurdle for learners to overcome.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people hold themselves back from speaking.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid of sounding foolish or making grammatical errors.
It's a natural fear.
It is.
But the video encourages us to shift our perspective and view mistakes as valuable learning opportunities.
That's a good point.
Remember, every fluent speaker was once a beginner.
That's true.
Everyone starts somewhere.
I love that it's about embracing the journey.
Yes.
Acknowledging that making mistakes is simply part of the process.
Part of the process.
But how do we stay motivated?
Yeah.
How do we avoid getting discouraged
Okay.
along the way?
That's a great question, and one that the video addresses directly.
Okay.
It highlights the importance of consistency and setting achievable goals.
So it's not about cramming in hours of study all at once.
No.
It's about creating a sustainable routine.
Exact.
Making small, incremental progress each day.
Exact. It's like training for a marathon.
Okay.
You wouldn't try to run the entire distance on your first day.
Right.
You would gradually increase your mileage over time.
Right.
Building your endurance and stamina.
So it's about building those language learning muscles gradually and consistently.
Precisely.
I like that.
Yeah.
Now, the video also mentions the importance of connecting back to our initial motivation.
Oh, that's so important.
For learning English.
Yeah.
Why are we doing this?
What's your why?
What's our why exactly? And I think that's such a valuable reminder, especially when we hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
Yes. It's about remembering our why.
Yeah.
Why are we putting in the effort to learn this language?
Exactly.
Is it for travel, for work, for personal enrichment? When we reconnect with that deeper purpose, it can reignite our passion and help us push through those challenging moments.
It's like having that North Star guiding us on our journey. It reminds us where we're headed.
Exactly.
And why we started in the first place.
Keeps us on track.
You know what's really fascinating to me about all these tips?
What's that?
Is that they can be tailored to individual learning styles.
Yes.
And preferences.
Absolutely.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach
to
language learning.
That's so true.
What do you think?
Well, some people thrive on using apps and technology, while others prefer more traditional methods like reading books or taking classes.
Right.
The key is to find what works best for you and create a learning plan that fits your unique personality and lifestyle.
It's about being self-aware.
Yes.
And understanding our own strengths and weaknesses.
As learners. Exactly. Some of us might be visual learners, others auditory learners, and still others kinesthetic learners.
Yeah.
The more we understand about our own learning styles, the more effectively we can tailor our approach.
I like that. And there's so many resources available these days.
There are.
From online courses and language exchange platforms to language learning communities and cultural events.
It's amazing.
It's an exciting time to be a language learner.
It is. It is.
It feels like the world is opening up in so many ways.
Yeah.
And being able to communicate in English is a key to unlocking so many opportunities.
For sure. It's about breaking down barriers, connecting with people from different cultures,
Yeah.
expanding our perspectives.
Absolutely. And remember, language learning is a journey, not a destination.
It is.
It's about embracing the ups and downs, celebrating those small victories, and never losing sight of the joy of learning.
That's beautifully said.
We covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive.
It's been a fascinating exploration.
It has.
Of some of the key strategies for accelerating the English learning process.
We've learned about building a strong foundation.
Right.
The power of speaking practice and immersion.
Yes.
The importance of expanding vocabulary and context. The value of mimicking native speakers.
For sure.
And the benefits of leveraging technology.
Powerful tools.
We've also discussed the importance of embracing mistakes.
Absolutely.
Staying consistent.
Yes.
And connecting back to our initial motivation for learning.
Your why.
Yeah, before we move on to the next batch of tips, though,
okay,
I'd love to hear what stood out to you as particularly relevant to your own language learning journey.
Oh, let me think about that for a second. You know what really struck me was that idea of learning grammar naturally through examples. I've always found traditional grammar textbooks a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But the idea of picking it up organically through conversation and exposure is really appealing.
Yeah.
It feels less intimidating.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I remember trying to memorize all those verb tenses in high school.
Yeah.
And it just didn't stick.
That's too much.
It was too much.
Yeah.
But when I started watching English movies and listening to music, I started to notice those patterns naturally.
Yeah.
It was like my brain was making those connections subconsciously.
That's exactly how it works by immersing ourselves in the language.
Right.
We're essentially giving our brains a massive data set to work with.
Interesting.
And over time, those patterns start to emerge.
Okay.
And grammar rules become less about memorization and more about intuition.
So it's like training our brains to recognize those patterns through repeated exposure.
Yes.
Rather than trying to force feed them rules.
Exactly. And the video makes a great point about using language learning apps
Right.
to supplement this process.
Yeah.
Apps like Duolingo and Babbel can be really helpful for reinforcing those grammar concepts
Right.
in a fun and engaging way.
Yeah, I've been using Duolingo myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm surprised by how much I'm enjoying it.
Yeah.
It feels more like a game,
Right.
kind of study tool.
That's the beauty of gamification.
Right.
By incorporating those game-like elements,
Mm-hmm.
these apps tap into our natural desire for rewards and achievements,
Yeah.
which keeps us motivated to keep learning.
It's amazing how much technology has changed the way we learn languages.
It really has.
Speaking of technology, the video also suggests using flashcards,
Yes.
particularly an app called Anki, to expand our vocabulary.
Yeah.
Have you ever used flashcards for language learning?
Absolutely. Flashcards are a classic learning tool for a reason.
Yeah, why is that?
They leverage the principle of spaced repetition,
Okay.
which is a powerful technique for improving memory retention.
You know, I've heard of spaced repetition,
Yeah.
but I'm not entirely sure how it works.
Okay, sure.
Could you explain it a bit?
So spaced repetition is based on the idea that we forget information over time,
Right.
but we can strengthen those memories
Okay.
by reviewing the material at increasing intervals.
Okay.
So for example, let's say you learn a new word today.
You might review it again tomorrow, then a few days later,
Okay.
then a week later, and so on.
So it's like giving our brains a little nudge
Exactly.
to remind them of the information before we completely forget it.
Exactly. By spacing out our review sessions,
Right.
we're essentially forcing our brains to work harder to retrieve the information,
Interesting.
which strengthens those neural connections.
Okay.
And makes the memory more durable.
That's fascinating. I'm going to have to look into Anki
Yeah.
and give spaced repetition a try.
That's a good one.
You know, one thing that really resonated with me from the video
Yeah.
was this emphasis on not being afraid to make mistakes.
Yes.
I think that fear of making mistakes is something that holds a lot of learners back.
I couldn't agree more. The video reminds us that making mistakes is an inevitable part of the learning process.
Right.
In fact, it's through those mistakes that we identify areas for improvement and refine our understanding.
It's like those aha moments you have.
When you realize you've been saying something wrong,
Exactly.
but now you finally get it.
And you learn from it.
It's almost like a little victory.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that native English speakers understand that you're learning. And they're generally very forgiving of mistakes.
Yeah.
They appreciate the effort you're making to communicate in their language.
That's a good reminder. Sometimes I get so caught up in trying to speak perfectly
Yeah.
that I forget to just relax and enjoy the process.
It's about finding that balance between striving for accuracy and allowing ourselves to be imperfect.
Yeah.
Embracing mistakes as learning opportunities is a key part of developing a growth mindset.
A growth mindset. I love that.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's about seeing challenges as opportunities for growth
Okay.
rather than setbacks.
So it's about believing that we can improve our abilities through effort and perseverance.
Exactly.
And that applies not only to language learning, but to life in general.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a love of learning, a curiosity about the world,
Yeah.
and a willingness to step outside of our comfort zones.
That's really inspiring. It makes me realize that learning a language is about so much more than just memorizing words and grammar rules.
It is.
It's about personal growth, cultural understanding,
Yes.
and connecting with people from different backgrounds.
Precisely. It's about expanding our horizons and enriching our lives.
Wow.
And, you know, one of the most practical tips the video offers for staying motivated
Okay, what's up?
is setting achievable goals.
Okay.
It encourages us to break down those seemingly daunting tasks
Right.
into smaller, more manageable steps.
Right. It's like that old adage, how do you eat an elephant?
Exactly.
One bite at a time.
One bite at a time, instead of feeling overwhelmed by the enormity of learning a language.
Right.
We can focus on mastering a few new words each day,
Okay.
having a short conversation in English, or watching an English language movie with subtitles.
Right. Those small victories can really add up over time.
They do.
I know for me, tracking my progress helps to keep me motivated.
Yeah.
It's like when you're training for a marathon and you see those miles adding up.
Yeah.
It gives you a sense of accomplishment and keeps you going.
That's a great analogy. And there are so many ways to track our progress in language learning.
Such as?
We can use apps that track our vocabulary growth. Note the number of minutes we spend practicing each day.
Okay.
Or simply keep a journal of our learning journey.
Yeah, it's all about finding what works best for us and creating a system that keeps us accountable and motivated.
Keeps you going.
Now, the video also mentions the importance of connecting back to our initial motivation
Our why.
For learning English.
Yeah.
I think that's such a valuable reminder.
It is.
Especially when we hit those inevitable bumps in the road.
It's about remembering our why.
Yes.
Why are we putting in the effort to learn this language?
Right.
Is it for travel, for work, for personal enrichment?
Mm-hmm.
When we reconnect with that deeper purpose,
Mm-hmm.
it can reignite our passion. Right. And help us push through those challenging moments.
It's like having a North Star guiding us on our journey.
Yes.
It reminds us where we're headed and why we started in the first place.
Keeps us on track.
You know what's really fascinating about all these tips?
What?
Is that they can be tailored to individual learning styles and preferences.
That's absolutely true.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to language learning.
No two learners are the same.
What do you think about that?
Well, some people thrive on using apps and technology,
Right.
while others prefer more traditional methods like reading books or taking classes. The key is to find what works best for you.
Yeah.
And create a learning plan that fits your unique personality and lifestyle.
It's about being self-aware and understanding our own strengths and weaknesses as learners.
Exactly. Some of us might be visual learners,
Right.
others auditory learners, and still others kinesthetic learners. The more we understand about our own learning styles, the more effectively we can tailor our approach.
That makes sense. And there's so many resources available these days.
There are.
From online courses and language exchange platforms to language learning communities and cultural events.
It's an amazing time to be a language learner.
It really is. It feels like the world is opening up in so many ways.
Yeah.
And being able to communicate in English is a key to unlocking so many opportunities.
For sure. It's about breaking down barriers, connecting with people from different cultures, and expanding our perspectives.
And remember, language learning is a journey, not a destination.
Love it.
It's about embracing the ups and downs,
Yeah.
celebrating the small victories, and never losing sight of the joy of learning.
Beautifully said.
Well, we've explored a lot of valuable insights in this deep dive.
We have.
We've learned about the power of learning grammar naturally,
Yeah.
the effectiveness of spaced repetition, the importance of embracing mistakes,
Yes.
the value of setting achievable goals,
For sure.
and the significance of connecting back to our initial motivation.
What's your why? Or why?
Find your why. We've also touched on the importance of finding a learning style that works for us
Yes.
and embracing the journey of language learning.
Absolutely.
And now, as we come to the end of our exploration,
Okay.
I want to leave you with a challenge.
A challenge.
Based on everything we've uncovered today, what one strategy resonates most with you?
Ooh.
What will you put into action today
Today.
to accelerate your English learning journey?
I like that.
It could be downloading a language learning app,
Okay.
committing to 15 minutes of daily speaking practice,
Mm.
starting a vocabulary notebook,
Right.
or simply shifting your mindset about making mistakes.
I love that one.
Maybe you'll watch an English movie tonight,
Oh, okay.
listen to an English podcast during your commute, or even try writing a short journal entry in English.
Good one.
The important thing is to take that first step,
Yeah.
no matter how small it may seem.
The first step is always the hardest.
Remember, every journey begins with a single step. And as you continue on this path of learning English, I encourage you to embrace the process,
Yes.
celebrate the small victories,
Love it.
and never stop exploring the richness and beauty
All right.
of this incredible language.
Okay.
Happy learning.
Happy learning.